Of the Georgia Summit on Early Language and Literacy, presented by the Teal Center for Early Language and Literacy. We're pleased to welcome you back, and we're going to get to hear from Zoe Myers today on how to weave powerful partnerships. But first, we have some exciting news from last night. Who here was at the dinner last night? Yes! We had some incredible awards presented, which we'd like to announce again for those people wanting to win it. So we have two awardees. We had the Marshes of Glenn Libraries, and we had Glenn County Family Connection. Also, this is just in time. We have a new award that is going to be for two lucky teams that are present here today during the summit. And they're going to be two teams that are going to be recipients of the Language as a Missing Link and Missed Opportunity Champion Award. And these will be for those who demonstrate commitment to early language development and the birth to age 8 continuum. The chosen champions will demonstrate a commitment to implementing and embedding evidence-based practices for early language and literacy through the utilization of the Language as a Missing Link toolkit, which was just launched yesterday by Emily Rubin, and all of you now have access to the toolkit that's downloadable from the Get Georgia Meeting website. Also, cross-sector partnerships, which you're going to learn about how to build stronger partnerships through the wisdom of Zoe Myers, and then community-based professional learning, and bridging the birth to 8 continuum by embedding the same practice across the continuum. So the Teal Center will bring Emily Rubin, what you get if you win. Two teams will be eligible. The Teal Center will bring Emily Rubin to your community, to provide community-based professional learning directly to you and your community. This will include up to 7 sessions. 7 sessions on the implementation of the toolkit and collective impact. As a part of this wonderful opportunity is being able to work with the Teal Center to develop a plan and scale implementation of the toolkit to embed the practice across systems. More information will be provided, and a request for proposals will be sent via email to the team leaders here today. So we hope you'll submit a proposal, and thank you for all the work that you do to propel every Georgia child to be proficiently and beyond. So without further ado, I would love to bring up Dr. Therese really wrong with pronouncing it. Dr. Teresa McCurry-Lavelle for a special presentation. Thank you.
Welcome back to the Governor's Summit on Early Language and Literacy, Day 2. It is nice again to see all these lovely faces in seats since we've been preparing for you to come to Georgia College for a bit here. And it's nice to finally feel, right, the synergy and the energy of us actually being in one room together. As you are aware, the Teal Center is celebrating our 5-year anniversary. And to those of you who joined us yesterday evening, thank you. I actually can't believe that it's been 5 years since I received the phone call from Georgia College's then Provost, Dr. Kelly Brown, and on behalf of the Governing Board, offering me this position. The privilege to serve. I was elated, to say the least. Coincidentally, though, I was in Barnes & Noble, and I was purchasing the book, Oh, the Places You'll Go by Dr. Seuss, because my niece was graduating from graduate school at the time. And I just turned to the back of the book, and the last page, I had read that book so many times. But obviously, with a whole new outlook, I read that last page. Today is your day. Your mountain is waiting, so get on your way. So little did I know in 2017 that I would be standing here today in 2022 and think about all, not just at the Teal Center that we've experienced, but as a statement we have experienced. And to be standing here today to tell you that we're bringing the conceptual idea of it. It was a conceptual idea in 2017, and we're bringing that idea to life in 2022. Is a tribute to not just the Jill Center, but to everybody that is sitting here today. So literacy changes lives, and we are turning this promise into practice. We are the state's designated research and training facility for the advancement of early language and literacy development. And over the past 5 years, I'm going to start with this. We have put evidence-based practices at the forefront of this work to ensure that our children are on the pathway to success. And we today are going to share with you how we have done this in 5 specific ways. Of course, it did not want to not show this picture. So in partnership with the Get Georgia Reading Campaign, raise your hand if you are a campaign community. Excellent. So the Jill Center has brought the basics, principles, and strategy to 16 counties in Georgia currently through collective impact to ensure that every child and every family has the potential to reach their full potential. So we're supporting social, emotional, and cognitive development of children from birth to age 3. And you heard Zoe's name already mentioned. She is going to be presenting later today. But we have been in partnership with Cook County Family Connection and her for over 3 years now. And we've been able to touch the lives of children such as Briella through our work with Cook County. So in fall 2019, Briella participated in week-long learning activities at the Candy Canes Learning Center. She was one of hundreds of young learners across Cook County who read and celebrated the storybook Forever Long Lonely. How many of you are familiar with that one? Excellent. She was able to create various forms of artwork. She learned through making paper and even planting the pine tree seedlings. Briella's mom was so excited about this experience, and she recounts and tells us with a smile. We had a great time celebrating the Loblolly pine tree through reading and creating together. And her dad was so excited to help her plant the little pine tree she would see during that event. Literacy changes lives, and we are turning the promise into practice. So the Jill Center has also convened state educators, researchers, caregivers, community organizations, leaders to learn about evidence-based practices for early language and literacy. We have conducted 3 virtual learning series, and today marks our 5th annual Governor Summit, highlighting experts in the field and practices for early language and literacy that are needed to propel every Georgia child to read proficiently and beyond. We are having an impact on participants in a variety of ways. Even after attending one of our virtual learning series, one educator told us that she was inspired to even go back to school. Literacy changes lives, and we are turning the practice into policy. Driven by implementation research, we have embarked on 2 impact research studies, the Literacy Mentoring for Leadership Impact Study and the USG Literacy Review. The findings from both of these studies are providing valuable insight on how we can improve our system of training for early language and literacy development for educators and all stakeholders involved in this development. Literacy changes lives, and we are turning the promise into practice and policy. I am also proud to share that each year the Jill Center invests about $1.4 million in communities, state agencies, and organizations in Georgia to support the use of evidence-based solutions that improve early language and literacy. Isn't this amazing? So we thank you for your monetary support and to continue to invest in our communities. Literacy changes lives, and we are turning the promise into practice. So we have established a solid foundation on which we will continue to build on. We are on the cusp of finding and establishing evidence-based solutions that improve early language literacy. The Jill Center is continuing to work on a number of initiatives for the upcoming fiscal year. Findings from the USG Literacy Review to better understand how to equalize and improve educators' knowledge base and in-class methodology. Impact data and the implementation of the basics in our communities through our collective impact grants initiative. We are going to launch a shared reading for babies in NICUs in the fall to embed early reading practices across the NICUs in Georgia. And I'm already planting the seed for the 2023 Governor Summit on Early Language and Literacy. We will continue to build partnerships, collaborations, and research teams throughout Georgia. Literacy changes lives, and we are turning the promise into practice. This journey, like most journeys, has presented some challenges, but most importantly, so many wins for our state's children. So I'm pleased to say, in celebrating our 5-year anniversary, we have started what we came to do and then some. But we could not have done it without the support of so many. First and foremost, Governor and Mrs. Dill for their commitment to literacy and education in our state, our governing board, USG and Georgia College, our statewide partners, our community partners, each of you sitting here with us today, our stakeholders, and last but not least, the Dill Center team who works daily to propel every Georgia child to read proficiently and beyond. And I'm just going to take a moment to recognize them. I'm going to start with Kimberly Scott, who is our Administrative Office Manager. Katrina Davis, our Program Assistant. Ashley Diamois, our Early Language Professional Development Specialist. Joseph Winker, our Data Analyst. Catherine Tanner, our Student Worker. Catherine was the creator of that video, so let's give her a round of applause. To continue Mrs. Dill's commitment and advocacy for early literacy and early childhood education throughout the state, we ask you to continue this journey with us, alongside universities, early childhood education programs, and other stakeholders, until every child in every zip code is able to decide their own future, and for the state of Georgia to bring that right to each of us and each of our children by becoming the first universal literacy state in the country. So thank you and enjoy the rest of your day today. Thank you.
Wow, I'm so impressed. 5 years of turning policy into practice, turning promise into policy. Yes. Thank you so much for the 5 years of dedication that you've given, and I'm so excited to see what comes next. And the convening that the Dill Center has been able to do, and the kind of collection of evidence-based practices that they brought. I don't know how many of you know, but they funded the toolkit that Emily Rubin was able to present yesterday, which is awesome. And that's just the tipping point, and the work that's being done across the state of Georgia. So, this is just the beginning. I'm excited to introduce Zoe Myers of Cook County Family Connection. She is the Executive Director of Cook County Family Connection, which has been there since 1999, and is the recipient of several collaborative achievement awards. In this position, she's built a strong community coalition of over 80 diverse partners working collectively. She secured over $14 million in federal, state, and private grants for community-based work, and has managed numerous collective projects to improve rural health. As an applied sociologist, she has published data reports and research studies on rural health, literacy, and social determinants of health. And Zoe has earned her Master of Science degree in Sociology from Valdosta State State University, where she's also served as an adjunct professor, teaching courses in sociology of community development. She is going to blow your mind with how to weave powerful partnerships. She wasn't able to join us today in person, but she is here with us on screen and is going to be able to share the wisdom to help us all build stronger partnerships. So please give a round of applause and welcome Zoe Myers.
Good morning. Can everyone hear me well, I hope?
Yes.
I'm glad to be with you this morning. I'm so sorry I couldn't be there in person. I had really looked forward to it, but I'm recovering from the flu, so I decided it was best to keep my flu germs here in South Georgia. So I appreciate the gents that are making it possible for me to share with you remotely this morning. And I'm going to pull up my presentation now and screen share with you. Okay, there we go. I'm hoping everyone can see the screen as we move along together. You know, my grandmother, her name was Mary Lou Lightfoot, and she was a resilient and strong Southern woman who raised 8 children during the Great Depression. And she, like so many other people during that time, knew how to sustain her family through farming, gardening, canning fruits and vegetables, baking and bartering and trading with her neighbors. And she also knew how to bring things together, bits and fragments and pieces, and create beautiful and wonderful things that her family needed. So, for example, that included sewing clothes for all of those 8 children and weaving together blankets and quilts that kept them warm during the winter. And she had baskets that were filled with yarn and pieces of fabric and sewing materials, and she would pull from each of those baskets and weave together these beautiful creations that she needed. I can tell you right now, I did not get that level of creativity and resourcefulness from my grandmother, but I learned an awful lot by watching that process. And so what I want to talk with you about this morning is that process of how we reach into certain baskets and we pull out those bits and pieces that we need to weave together powerful partnerships that make our work successful. So the first basket that I want to talk to you about this morning is your human resource basket. And that includes the talents, skills, abilities, expertise, knowledge, ideas of every individual partner who comes to your table. So, for example, of the 80 local and regional partners and some state partners who make up our network, we have artists and storytellers, scientists and data nerds, bookkeepers and evaluators, writers, public speakers, pastors, and leaders. So all of those talents of those individuals are in this human resource basket. And when we have a need, then we match that need to the partners who have those specific abilities and talents that we need. But the question always seems to be in the beginning, how do we get all of these partners to put their talents and skills into that collective basket? How do we bring partners into the process and then keep them there? I believe that in your handout materials today, you have a handout on the hierarchy of needs that will explain this in more detail, but I want to touch on it briefly with you. Because to fully engage people in a partnership process, you must understand why they need to be included. why they need to be a part. And that, of course, begins with Maslow's hierarchy that you've all seen from the 1940s, the theory of human motivation. And basically that concept says everything we do, every action, is because we have a need to be met, whether that's conscious or unconscious. And this applies to collaborative partnerships as well. People become involved because they have an underlying need. And then once you recognize and understand that individual need, you can feed that need back to them, which then becomes their return on investment. So if we take a minute and just look at the pyramid, beginning at the bottom, this typically, we hope, doesn't always apply to partners who are involved, but those physiological needs are just our basic human needs for food, drink, shelter, sleep, clothing, those basic physical needs that we have. But then if you move a step up to safety, that's those needs around personal and emotional safety, around financial safety, job security. And I can tell you, we have some partners who come and sit at the table because job security, career advancement is advanced by being a part of the collaborative, right? It makes them look better in their job. Sometimes it's actually an expectation of their job description. And that's perfectly fine, and that's why some of those people sit there. We then move up to love and belonging, and that's simply people's need for friendship, for family, for a sense of belonging to a group. We have several partners who originally came into our partnership because of that need. And there's one in particular that comes to mind who's turned out for the past 15 years to be one of our strongest partners. But he originally came in because he doesn't have any family, he doesn't have children, he was isolated socially, and he needed that sense of belonging to a group. And so we embraced him and fed that need, and he has stayed at our table now for 15 years. We then move up to the level of esteem, and that's the need for recognition, respect, status, and being valued by others. So esteem is external. We're looking for value and respect from the outside, from other people. We see this an awful lot with our elected officials, with high-profile leaders in the community, where it's important to them for the community to see that they're part of this process and that they're doing what they're able to do to push our goals and mission forward. And so with those people, we make certain that they, in fact, get the recognition that they need, right? So if we're publishing a news article on something, those are the folks that get pushed out into the front of the photograph so that they get that recognition from the community for the work that they're doing. And then finally, the very top of that pyramid is your self-actualization. Now, esteem, we said, is external. Self-actualization, in contrast, is internal. So that's our feeling of being the very best that we can be, of recognizing our full potential. So it's an internal process. And we find this an awful lot with partners who have a spiritual or moral or even altruistic obligation to serve others or to serve their community. So the point in this slide is helping you to understand that every single need is okay. It doesn't matter if someone's sitting there because it advances their career or gives them job security, or whether they're there because they need to belong, or whether they're there for that need to be respected. All of those needs are perfectly okay. What's important to remember is that we have to learn as leaders to recognize what those needs are in each individual, and then satisfy and feed those needs for your partners. And I can tell you this with all certainty, that satisfied partners will stay at your table for decades to come. So that's the basic point of the way that we approach partnerships. I also wanted to show you a picture of this little coffee cup. You know, in the human sciences, there are numerous theories about our innate human desire to create. Because when we create something, what happens is we see our own reflection in that thing that we've created, which boosts our self-actualization. This little coffee mug has sat on my desk for the past 25 years. When my son was 10 years old, he went to a summer art camp for a week, and he worked on that mug as a gift for me. His little fingerprints are still inside where he molded the clay. His initials are etched on the bottom. And of course, you can see by looking at the picture, it doesn't actually function very well as a mug because the handle is horizontal instead of vertical. But that's okay, that's part of that creativity. And he was so proud of that gift when he presented it to me. And I did, of course, what most loving mothers would do, right? Oh my gosh, that's the most beautiful mug. I love that shade of blue because it reminds me of the ocean. I'll keep it forever. And so what happened for my son in that process, there were three things that happened during that interchange. First, he created something, this mug, and he saw his own reflection in what his hands had created, which boosted his self-actualization. Secondly, he then gave that gift to someone else, which was me, who valued and appreciated it. And that increased his esteem, right? That external approval. And then thirdly, he learned this lesson internally that when I give good gifts to mom, she celebrates and makes a big deal about it, so it's good to give gifts to mom. So my message is for you to hear this. That exact same dynamic happens with all of your partners. When a partner gives to you their time, their talents, their ideas, if you will celebrate, recognize, and value that gift, then they will continue to stay engaged with you because it's building their esteem and their self-actualization. I want to show you a couple of examples of how we pull from that human resource basket. So on the left, you see Naisha Key. Naisha is the head librarian of our local library. She is a tremendous storyteller and dramatic reader. And through our partnership, Naisha helps us write articles about literacy. She hosts events and poetry workshops for children. And she recently began volunteering with one of our support groups for mothers, where she is teaching them about early literacy and learning. So every day, Naisha and her staff promote language nutrition, right, which is one of the Get Georgia reading pillars, language nutrition, and her library also distributes the basics information to all the families who visit the library. On the right, you see Candace Horn, and I know a lot of you know Candace, but for those of you who may not, I'll tell you, Candace is a rock star in early education, and she's recognized for her creativity and excitement in teaching young children. Every month, through our Well-Fed and Well-Read Truck, which is funded in part through Georgia Decal, we deliver fresh fruits and vegetables to local child care centers, and often that is candy cane sites. So the picture that you're seeing here on the right, that day, we had delivered freshly picked Myers lemons to the children. And then what Candace and her staff do is they build a full day of learning around those produce deliveries. So this particular day, the children got to make fresh homemade lemonade, which included counting and measuring the sugar and the water that went in there. They squeezed the lemons themselves. They learned about how lemons grow on trees. They drew pictures of yellow lemons, and they had taste testing events. And that type of learning occurs every time we deliver produce to candy canes, which again supports another Get Georgia Reading pillar of positive learning climate. And y'all, I just couldn't help but show you. I wanted you to see a few pictures of their faces and taste tested those lemons that day. So that's sensory learning experience. The second basket that I want to talk to you about briefly is your social resource basket. And that holds all of the connections, relationships, partnerships, and networks between your partners. Because of course it's very important that we bring partners to our collaborative table, but it's just as critically important at the same time that we are building those relationships between and among our partners individually. So to give you one really quick example, one of our newest partners is a faith-based support group for mothers. And so when we connected with them, we provided funding, training, support, started working with this group. But at the same time, we began immediately connecting them with other partners. So for instance, we connected them with the Georgia Department of Behavioral Health, who's providing counseling and training for those mothers. We connected them with our partners at the Haven Shelter, who have now started coming in doing domestic violence training for the families. And we connected them with Wiregrass Technical College partners who have already enrolled several of those mothers into GED and adult education programs. So what happens in those side relationships is just as critical as what happens at the organizational table. And as you're building those connections between and among your partners, you're also fostering higher levels of trust. And as one of our state partners says to us all the time, community change happens at the speed of trust. So build those trusting relationships among your partners. And this will show you why that's really important. This spider web graph is from a social network analysis conducted among 30 of our lead partners. So what we found were there are actually 493 different interconnected relationships occurring among and between those 30 partners. And trust levels were very high at over 92%. So instead of having 30 partners that we can work with to advance our missions, We instead have 493 unique and different avenues where we can begin to create change. So that's the actual significance of your social resource networks. And I just wanted to show you a few faces. These are some of the faces of partners who make up that spider web graph that you just saw. We have over 60 local and regional partners, and then 20 state and national partners, and some are focused on literacy and early learning, others are focused on food access, others are focused on health equity, but what's happening is that in synchrony, they're all working together through these different connections and resources, and that's where your social resource basket is so important. And your material resource basket is important, right? This is the basket that holds your grant awards, blended funding, donations, in-kind contributions, and volunteer hours. Everything that has a monetary, tangible value is in this basket. And it's important to remember to have diverse resources in that basket. Because I'm an old grant writer, my organization has always been very heavy on grant awards. But we also understand that it's important to have diverse resources in that basket. So, for instance, our county commission provides our office spaces and utilities as an in-kind contribution. Our local school system provides fiscal and audit services in kind. We have state and national partners who provide professional training, and our partners themselves provide hundreds of hours of volunteer service every year. So all of that is in this basket. And then this just gives you a quick visual. These are our primary funders that hold our work together. Some provide funding for literacy and education, others for health initiatives. But the secret is that they all work together, they flow together to create that wall of support for our collaborative work. The one thing I do want to talk to you about really quickly is the most important thing about material resources is this. View the people who support your organization not as a money tree and not as a funder, but as an actual partner in your work. Because when people support us, they are in fact partnering with us. And then we have an obligation to advance their work and their mission and to prove that we're committed and accountable partners. So it's just about a paradigm shift in your thinking. Instead of thinking about fundraising, think about friend raising. Because all relationships start and begin with those personal interconnections. And the last basket that I want to touch on briefly is your data basket. That holds all of your research, data collection, assessments, interviews, and data stories. In our collaborative, all work begins and ends with data. Every strategy, initiative, and decision is driven by the data. Because we can't begin to solve a problem or create a plan until we first fully understand the real data behind that and what's driving, what factors are driving that data. You'll notice this basket also includes data stories. And I want you to hear this. Research shows that stories are 22 times more memorable than just numbers and facts. 22 times more memorable than numbers and facts. You can read plenty of brain research on that, but basically it comes down to the fact that stories trigger visual images and emotions in our brain that are not triggered by numbers and statistics. So whenever possible, share your data through stories for maximum impact so that people will grab hold of and remember that data. And these are just a couple of quick examples of some of the data work that we have done recently. Robert Wood Johnson Foundation funded a study for us to look at the social determinants of health by census tract in our county. So we collected data on indicators related to literacy, education, health, poverty, crime, economics, and other social determinants by census tract. We then mapped all of that data and published this report on the left called Place Matters. The data allowed our leaders and our community decision makers to actually see where those neighborhoods and pockets are in our community where indicators are significantly worse. So we could see the areas where the highest number of children were living in poverty. See the neighborhoods where the highest number of children were uninsured. Look into those pockets of the community where most children ages 3 and 4 were not enrolled in preschool. And those revelations then allowed our leaders to begin to create change and new systems and strategies to address those needs. The other report you see, Rural Voices, was funded for us by the Urban Institute during the very worst of the pandemic, and we spent months interviewing and surveying hundreds of residents to understand what the real impacts of the pandemic were on them. And again, we looked at economics, we looked at food security, education, child care, and it was really shocking. And some of what rose to the surface from that data was that food insecurity in our community increased by 365% during the pandemic, and mental health problems increased by over 300%. So again, the data was used by our leaders and decision makers to say, how do we begin to change systems, strategies, the way we deliver services so that we're better serving our community? So I believe that data is the most powerful tool that you have, and I challenge you to begin to use it in really creative ways to steer and support your work. And I will leave you this morning with this quote and just remind you in closing, remember to reach deep into those 4 different baskets we've talked about to pull the resources out that you have and you need to weave together a strong and beautiful partnership in your community that can make a difference. And again, I thank the Dill Center for making it possible for me to be with you remotely, and I appreciate your attention, and I'm so sorry I couldn't be there with you personally, but I hope things are going wonderful for you today, and I appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
The applause, because wow, that was an incredible presentation. Thank you so much for zooming in. Well, we are, I know, going to be taking the lessons that you shared and weaving those into the practices and policy at the local level. So apologies, we are out of time for questions at the moment because we're going to dive into conversation. Unless there is a dire question right now, I'm going to run up to the podium and ask Zoe. Good. I'm blown away. Wow. Thank you again, Zoe. bless you. Stay well. Stay with us as we continue today, so if you can. So thank you again. All right. Now, oh yes, we have a question.
So, I appreciate everything you're saying, and I definitely will study and try to learn to apply it. What I'm wondering is, how do we, like, what's the best practice, or, like, how do we work most effectively with each other in collective action? So, is there something, like, underlying that has to happen so that we can be effective working with each other? So many of us have the same goals and objectives, and we have to, and I guess in a collective impact, collective action structure, have a backbone, someone who's being the leader, where we all want to make sure that our individual organizations' goals are met. So how is there like an overall advice that you provide on how we get started and establish that in our own communities?
So we have a pretty big question all about how we work effectively together when we're all basically after the same shared stakeholders, which is improving the lives and literacy of children. And so collaborative working, and I feel the four baskets of the work that she really helped spell out that strategy is really the human resources, understanding who you have, the social networks that you have, the existing infrastructure of social networks, the funding, all the creative ways that you can have funding, partnerships, and then the shared data, which is almost like, Zoe, when you mentioned your grandmother or your mother, about weaving and the bartering that you do, I think that the brilliant thing that Zoe has figured out is sharing the data and understanding the landscape of the data to be able to share those resources among your partners and to organize around collective impact. But Zoe, would love for you to share any final nuggets of wisdom for how we collaborate when we're all on the same mission together.
Okay, and I think you just summarized it so well. It is, in fact, that process of all of those resources coming together at the same time. But again, like we mentioned, it has to be, I think, driven by the data, because that's what sets the foundation for our work. That's how we create this shared common vision, right? And that's what we say a lot of times. I'll just add this. We say, if you want to build a great ship, you don't go out and tell people to cut wood and hammer nails. Instead, you give them the vision of what it would feel like to sail on that great ocean, and that vision will drive the work that takes place. So it's about creating a shared common vision that everybody can see and feel themselves in that vision, and then using the data to steer that ship, if you will.
Beautiful. It's almost like we're here to help build the vision and also the blueprint. And once you have that blueprint, people can see where they fall in on what elements that they want to focus on. Prioritization, ruthless prioritization, as I say. Wow, thank you again, Zoe. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for all of you.
Wow. Okay. All of you should have a beautiful card in front of you on your tables. And now we are going to weave into the four baskets that Zoe and I have talked about. We're going to be really digging into those, finding ways that we can implement the partnerships and strengthen our partnerships at the local level. And so absolutely. So Zoe introduced us to the essential strategies for effective, lasting partnerships, and showed us how these strategies can be put into place to uplift our most precious and shared stakeholders, which are our children. So the format will be very similar to yesterday, where we'll have 3 big questions, And I took notes from Zoe's presentation. I was trying, even though I've already seen her talk and present before, I'm still blown away. But what struck me the most, and why we're investing so much time in conversations at the table level, is because collaboration goes at the speed of trust. And it takes relationships, and those relationships start at your table, the people that you work with daily on this work. You get to know them in ways that you didn't know them before, and to understand how they think, what talents they bring, what needs they have, what those hierarchical needs they have, so that you can be better at giving and receiving thanks and gratitude for the work that they put into it. So on that note, we're going to kick off with question 1, which is, as Zoe mentioned, none of us are on an island. We all exist in a complex web of relationships. So share some of the partnerships from your own life and some of the shared goals those partnerships help support. And we'll come back in 10 minutes for the next question.